All right, we are live. Okay. Hi. Well, welcome to Embrace Your Edges. Obviously, I'm lagging a little bit, of course, because still trying to figure out that platform. So welcome to Embrace Your Edges, an informal chat with Hilary, myself. I am in Ontario, Canada. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that subscription button wherever it is. My finger is lost in the background. Okay, joining me tonight, I have a bestseller author, and we're going to get back into that very shortly. Also, that we have two contests that you can enter. We will go through those at the end of the show, but you can check those out on IG at Embrace Your Edges. So embrace underscore your underscore edges. Now, on with tonight's show. Since the pandemic, mental health has been the forefront of conversations and rise of the individuals dealing with various mental health issues and disorders, in particular anxiety and PTSD, has us asking why. I do work in the industry where I have to deal with a lot of people who are now dealing with new cases of mental health since the pandemic. Tonight's guest is bestseller author of Survive, Then Thrive, Peggy Onlock. You can pick up a book or download a copy of her from Barnes& and Nobles, Amazon, or Kindle, or enter our contest for a chance to win an autograph copy. Let me give you folks a background about Peggy, okay? So, Peggy was born in Toronto, Canada, Ontario, and spent most of her life. Hello. Uh, Hello, baby Eiffel. Nice to see you. And she's saying goodnight. She spent most of her life there, and then she moved into a northern city. So she went more north. Uh, Peggy retired early from financial services and moved further north. Oh, even more, and found employment in public and community safety initiatives with the provincial police service. So during this time, Peggy found meaning in the rising awareness around mental health challenges, and that is her passion because no human being should have to face the challenges that she faced in her personal life without the love and support of others. This book is the labor of that passion and commitment and love. Welcome to the show, Peggy.
Thanks very much, Hilary. It's wonderful to be here this evening.
Oh, it's great. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be here. We're really excited. I'm super excited because you've had a lot of influence on me. Doing Toastmasters as well as just an individual and how you manage and navigate conflict or even dealing with situations I do reach out sometimes. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. I'm so excited to get into this book. I know I bought a copy from you, but I also downloaded a copy. I bought one too, so it's really great. I really enjoyed the read, as a fellow author as well. But so I really enjoyed the read, and I love the honesty in it, and the it was just really raw, and I love it. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for sharing your life with us. So let's get into the questions. What inspired you to write Survive, Then Thrive? Was there a personal experience or a specific moment that sparked the idea of this book?
Several things. I've always loved writing. Ever since I was a little girl, I liked writing essays and stories and reading. So writing is something that comes naturally to me.
Okay.
Now, with this particular book, I started writing it. Don't laugh, anybody, but it took me over 20 years to write this book because
Hey, that's fine. It takes a long time. It is a labor of love, so love takes time.
it does. So I wrote it initially because I wanted to write a novel to give myself something to do to take my mind off of some of the things that I was going through. Mm-hmm. I wrote part of it, and I got thinking that my own life is a story as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I took my own life as the inspiration behind the book. And I decided rather than writing a novel, I was going to write my memoirs. But then at that time is when I was going through some of the most serious symptoms as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I put the book down thinking, nobody's going to want to read my story. So I put it away for probably, if, well, at least a few years. And then I picked it up again one day and I read it and I thought, this isn't so bad. I'm going to keep writing it. And
Nice.
I started writing partly for journaling because
Oh,
it was
yes.
therapeutic for me to write down. It was almost like talking to somebody, except
Mm-hmm.
I was writing it or typing it on paper instead. So
Yeah.
initially, after I started writing it, and I had a few other people read bits and pieces of it, so
Mm-hmm.
encouraged me that it's a story worth telling. So I should write my story and take it from there. Even if I never published it, it would be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So that was my inspiration behind it.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. And yeah, you're right. When you start once you start journaling and you see it, and you know what's interesting when you have your own story and your own experiences, you don't ever think that anyone wants to hear about it. But the lessons and the different relatable situations that people when they're reading your memoir, it's like, wow, some person gets me or understands me. So thank you so much for being honest and raw in your book. It was just really amazing. So thank you for that. So throughout your research, I know the research is you and writing process, did you encounter any unexpected findings or insights that significantly influence your perspective on resilience or personal growth?
Yes, I think from writing mine too, because of the time period when I experienced some of the worst symptoms that I experienced, it would have been in the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Post traumatic stress is something I had only heard about as it related to combat.
Right.
It never occurred to me that anybody who lived in Canada all their life,
Mm-hmm.
even after experiencing some of the things I did, could have such a thing because it was something veterans had.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a way that was also very difficult for me because it was almost like my pain wasn't worth looking into
Right.
because I never gone off and fought for my country
Right.
and
Right.
things like, oh, it was really weird that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I also have family who was in the military, and I was very close to an uncle and aunt in particular who
Mm-hmm.
were very involved, and we used to chat. I was a history major in university too, so
Oh,
I loved
nice.
history.
Yeah.
So a lot of my stories were from speaking to people. So that's partly what I considered my research. But as far as the mental health,
Mm-hmm.
I was researching my own life and I was relating it to things I had experienced in the past.
And
So,
that's interesting. You brought up the army piece because my first understanding of PTSD actually happened where I was young and I was working in a um, a grocery store and I was the cashier and I just took a break to uh, grab something and purchase it, and so the person standing, and I was night shift too, and the person standing in front of me, the customer was a person from the army, Canadian Army, and he was just standing there staring at the cashier. And after a while, she got kind of nervous. She said, "Is everything okay, sir?" And I think he just needed to talk to someone, and he just said, "I, I woke up last night and I almost killed my wife." And yeah, he said, she left me, and I didn't know where I was. I thought I was still in the war. I didn't know where I was. And I'm sorry. I lost my family last night. And we sat there and we spoke to him for a good hour. Just I think he just needed someone to talk to, and he was dressed in his uniform, and we were just concerned, like, is he going to be okay once he leaves us, you know? And that was and I didn't understand what was happening because I was young, and I didn't know what was happening, and it was my manager that said that's PTSD, and we should call someone to let them know that what happened, and she called 911 and got the police out there to help him, but I didn't know what that was. And as I went through my years and working in criminal justice, especially criminal justice, a lot of those officers and people working at frontline deal with PTSD and either hide it or don't have the time or the outlets to deal with it because it's considered a weakness, right?
Yeah. I actually was involved in that as well when I did work for the police service, because the police are they're really going out of their way to make sure that the people who work for them have support now. Right. So one of the things I was able to get involved with, partly because of my own experience, was the initiatives that did address mental health in the workplace. So that was the absolute apple of my eye when I was working for public safety, because it was just so important for me, because I recognized what some people went through. So I was able to do research in that capacity, read everything I could, go to seminars, training courses, and I learned a lot about what I was going through myself.
Yeah. And this and the thing is, we don't realize how quickly it can happen, or how I mean, there's so many people in society that have PTSD but don't even know they have it, because, as you say, it's normally equated to someone in criminal justice. But it could be a simple thing as seeing a traumatic or having a traumatic experience and then having to relive that through questioning, or having to have no supports around it, and then have to navigate the world having that as a quote unquote secret. It could be something like that. There's so many different forms and ways this is developed, with lack of treatment, and can become very, very severe. So, I totally understand what you said about that, and it's great that you can use your experience to kind of show us what it looks like in quote unquote the everyday person. In your opinion, what are some common misconceptions about resilience? Now we're talking about that, and how does your book aim to address or correct them?
I think in a lot of ways, even understanding post-traumatic stress symptoms and what can cause it is a long way going towards resilience, because it's very difficult to address even your own issues when you don't understand what it is that's happening to you. I had absolutely no idea for years. And it was quite a few years after, when I was actually speaking to my psychologist, and I came right out and asked her, did I have or do I have PTSD? So her response to me was, you have been treated for post-traumatic stress symptoms and you're recovering.
Wow.
That was really important to me, because one of the chapters in my book, it was actually, I felt like I was in the middle of a war zone, even though I was in Canada. And Canada has never, they've never been at war on their own land,
right?
Except for maybe in the 1812, that type of thing. But that was a long time ago, and I wasn't around. So it was something that really hit home with me. And I understood what it was and why my brain was doing the things it was doing to me. So once it became understandable, I learned more about it. I was able to build up that resilience and find out some of the coping mechanisms that worked for me. And some of them were, journaling, I think, was number one, because writing is almost like talking to somebody, except you're not talking, you're just getting it out of your system by putting pen to paper or typing it out.
Yes.
So that was wonderful for me.
Yeah. I love the whole journaling and writing a letter, especially if you have to write a letter to the person that caused you the trauma. That's very, very therapeutic, and it really does work wonders.
I did that as well.
Oh, did you? How did that make you feel?
It was a little bit strange for me
Okay.
because one of the letters I wrote, I actually did end up giving it to the person.
Okay.
And it made it easier for me because part of what caused my post traumatic stress is a childhood assault.
Mm-hmm.
I was fairly young, so it was years later that I went back and I met the person who had
Mm-hmm.
assaulted me.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than talking to him about it,
Mm-hmm.
I had written a letter and I just handed him the letter and let him read it. So
Good.
that
Wow. That's powerful.
was, and it was easier for me because I thought, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah. But you were in control because you determined how you were going to do that. So you were
Yeah.
in control. That's amazing. And this is the thing is that when you have to do that, when you have the action piece, because I did the similar thing where I was like, I have to get rid of this and I have to put it where it belongs. It is something that's happened to me, but I didn't cause what happened to me. And so I have to put it back where it belongs. And I know that, did you have anything come up that kind of triggered you and then you had to seek either some kind of therapy or strategy to navigate? Because when you're dealing with trauma or dealing with PTSD, you're now having to bring up things that cause the PTSD. You know, how did you navigate that? What kind of strategies did you pull up to help yourself?
Yeah, mine came up very suddenly. It was really unexpected because some of what caused it was like decades prior to that. I
Okay.
didn't have any of the severe symptoms until I was in my 40s.
Mm-hmm.
The assault had happened when I was in my, like, I wasn't even 10 years old yet.
Right,
And then
right.
in the early 20s. Was decades later, it came up very suddenly. A lot of it was because of a relationship I was in at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He kept reminding me of it. So I think just that constant reminder
Mm-hmm.
and the stressors of both work and at home, it just something twigged and I could not control what was coming into my mind. So
Right.
every single bad thing that ever happened to me
Mm-hmm.
came to my mind all at once, and it was just so overwhelming that I couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
Now, I ended up in emergency twice because of it, and that's really what forced me to go for professional help.
Mm-hmm.
I was on medication for it for a while,
Yeah.
and then went for I found a psychologist that had been recommended with somebody that in my workplace,
Mm-hmm.
and she was an absolute lifesaver. I went to, like, we talked to each other. She was my psychologist for over 20 years, and she tried some of the different treatments that you can do for post-traumatic stress. But I think a lot of the things, it was just the trusting relationship we had
Yes.
built with each other,
Mm-hmm.
and that really helped me cope with what I was dealing with at the time and understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And she was also very encouraging with the writing, the journaling, the going out for a walk and clearing my head and trying to get to the point where I felt safe again.
Yes.
So
Wow.
professional was absolutely necessary, or I am pretty sure I would not have gotten through this.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's amazing. And your book explores the concept of striving after adversity. Can you share some key strategies or principles you believe are essential for individual to transition from survival mode to thriving?
I think for the first number of years, I survived through a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't really feel like I was living per se. Like
Yeah.
I didn't feel fulfilled. I felt like I was just getting by day to day and surviving through some of the things that I was going through. And that to me wasn't enough. Like I didn't want to feel unsafe at work. I didn't want to feel unsafe in my own home. And I
Okay.
wanted to able to go out and do some of the things without feeling that I had to look over my shoulder all the time to make sure that I was in a safe place. So I think that's where thriving comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people might have different perception of what it means to thrive as well. To me, my bar of thriving is, I shouldn't say it's low, but it's probably much lower than many people, because for me to thrive, it means I'm in a safe place. I'm feeling at peace with myself, and I'm feeling at peace with my surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
So to me was the most, and it still is the most important thing.
Yeah.
I also wanted to thrive insofar as I was doing the things that I wanted to do that I didn't find the time to do when I was working full time.
Yeah.
And it's just something I wanted to focus on me more instead
Oh.
of job and everybody else around me, and
Yes.
to do things that meant a lot to me.
Yes.
And one of them was writing this book.
You know, the whole concept of mental health is pretty new. And when I say new, I mean society and the resources around coming and supporting the idea that it's okay to not to be okay. Because
Yeah,
back in the day, in the 80s, 90s, and even the early 2000s, you say mental health, it was like a secret. Don't talk about it. We're not going to touch on it. And what was associated with mental health was that you're crazy, right? And
yes,
it was a shame. A lot of shame was around that, and and that shame actually made it worse for many people to get more into their mental health. And now, so you mentioned trust. How do you think trust can be created with a person who has PTSD or any kind of mental health disorder? Talk to the counselors and to the therapists and to the people out there in the resource piece trying to help, or even a friend or a family member. How do you think trust can be built, especially when there's so much fear around disclosing that you do have a mental health disorder?
yeah. I think one of the things that you mentioned that's really important is whenever people used to hear mental health or mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
it was all something that you were ashamed of, you felt you were weak, and it's something you don't talk about. I think we are getting better at recognizing that everybody has mental health, whether it's good mental health
Yeah.
or they've got challenges. It's
Yes.
part of our being. We've got physical health, we've got mental health, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really important that we look after our mental health just as much. In my case, I look after my mental health more
Mm-hmm.
because that's where I have faced the most challenges. So that's where I spend most of my time. Because if you don't have good mental health, your physical health is probably going to deteriorate a little as well.
Very much
So I
so.
so I think part of the getting to the point where we can talk about it is recognizing that everybody has mental health, and it's a very
Yes.
important part of who we are as people. We shouldn't be any more ashamed of saying we're having a mental health challenge as going to somebody and saying, I've got pneumonia, I've got the flu, or I broke my leg. Like,
Yes.
it's something that's part of every single human being. And I think we have to recognize that more and pay attention to it
Yes.
as well.
I 100% agree with everything that you say. One of the things that I'm seeing is taking away the gender from mental health as well, and realizing that, as you say, everyone has some kind of mental health, either disorder or issue, or just mental health in general, whether it's good or bad, or managing. There is something called mental health, and we have to have conversations around that. Your book discusses the importance of mindset, and I love mindset. I always talk about growth mindset and healthy mindset. I had a full conversation last night about mindset, okay, and willpower and survival mode, because survival mode is one of those things where you get willpower exhaustion, and you become exhausted from willpower, and now you go into survival mode. So Your book discusses the importance of mindset in overcoming challenges. How do you suggest readers cultivate a resilience mindset, especially during difficult times? And can you use the power of thought? I love this part of the chapter, of chapter 15, as a guide. I'll read a little bit of it. Or do you want to read a little bit of it? Can you read a little bit of it?
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
Another big learning for me was recognizing the power of choosing my thoughts. We acknowledge the importance of paying attention to what food we consume for our physical health, but rarely pay attention to monitor the thoughts we consume.
Oh,
This is a key shift, as the thoughts we choose and the meaning we attach to those thoughts will determine our reality. I guess with me, that was very important because when you suffer from PTSD, you cannot control your thoughts. Things from all over the place just pop into your mind. One of the things I did initially when I was going through the most difficult times, again, was journaling, but it's something that one of the counselors I spoke to recommended. And it's no matter how bad your day is, write down at least 3 things that are positive.
yes.
If you can't find anything that's positive, go outside, look at the garden, see a flower blooming. There's one of your positive thoughts right there.
Yes.
So I tell you, there were days when it was really difficult to find those
Yeah.
positive thoughts, but you've no idea how meaningful that was to me, because when everything's negative, it just drags you down to the point where you can't function. So, and to see something like a bird singing in the tree or a flower blooming, it really was a lift. And I think our oneness with nature is also something that can really help us with a positive mindset and get out of some of the dark thoughts that we have when we're going through some very anxious moments.
Yeah.
So,
The conversation I had last night was around understanding, for example, could we talk about money, and how much control the word money has over our lives. And I'm not saying that your problems are going to do not involve money, but what I'm saying is if you focus on not having money, you're not going to be able to create a mindset that can manage dealing with any kind of issues. And so if you create a positive mindset and saying, what strategies can I put in place? What other things can I do? And the example that I give was, if my mindset is so focused on I don't have any money, I'm not focusing on things that I can do to get myself things that I need. For example, food. Looking, get an appointment at a food bank, for example. And now I don't have to spend that $20 on food, and now I can spend it on. Now I have food in the fridge, and I have that $20 still. And now maybe I go to a local agency and get a gas card, and now I don't have to spend that $20 on a gas. I have a gas card. So if you create a positive mindset and you look at creating that muscle around the mindset, then you can find strategies to help you navigate not having access to money in that moment or in that time, so that you can put yourself in the position to deal with other things and develop yourself to get to back to employment or back to getting a more positive mindset that will give you the strength and willpower that you do need to survive difficult times. So that's what I love, the idea about mindset and healthy mindset and creating and growing that.
yeah, and I think it's important to recognize too, there's no shame in going to agencies to find help.
And
It's
there's
a
the part.
it's a strength to be able to go and ask for help, and
Yes.
that's what they're there for.
Yes.
So,
And this is
so
the part where I think that, especially people that have never, since the pandemic, have never accessed these agencies before, don't know how to navigate them, and feel some kind of pride or shame around it because society or whoever society is, have put that shame in place to say, if you go and seek welfare or you go into an agency, then something's wrong with you and you're lazy and this is that and all these negative pieces and shame that comes along with that. And my thought is, forget about all that. Create your, work on your mindset and say, I want to get myself out of this, and I need to make sure I get the right resources and the right supports around me so that I can navigate and I could stay as healthy mentally as possible.
Yes.
So
And
yeah.
we all need sometimes.
And we all
Every,
need that sometimes. Yeah, I could go on and on. I love growth mindset. There's an exercise called the 5 4 3 2 1 theory, and that is an exercise that a lot of therapists use to stop panic attack, for example, in his, right away. And you saying going outside and look for something positive, that's one of the things where they're like, look around the room, find something that you can count. So yeah. Could you share a story or anecdote from your research or your personal experience that exemplifies the resilience you discuss in your book? So summarize for me chapter 8, for example. And I keep saying chapter this, chapter that. Oh God.
work and home environments, no
Yes.
peace haven. I think one of the things that caused my PTSD as well is at work, I was under a lot of pressure and I didn't feel like I had support.
Mm-hmm.
And at home, I was in a bad relationship, so I felt unsafe all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if one of those things was going well, I might have not had as bad of an impact to the stress. But because 7/24, I was feeling that stress,
Right.
and I felt there was no peaceful haven,
Mm-hmm.
then that's what caused a lot of the stress. And of course, the one thing that PTSD also will do is you can't sleep, you have nightmares, you have flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Going without sleep is not a good thing to do at all. So if anybody out there is having issues sleeping, try and do something about it, because if you
Yes.
go enough days with no sleep,
Yes.
it's not good at all.
No.
So
It's
I
very
think
damaging.
yeah. So I think with that too, it's one of the things that caused most of my stress, and it was over an extended period of time. So it was during that time that I broke,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Oh, you wrote the
And
book.
I broke me.
Oh, you broke you.
I broke myself.
Oh, jeez.
It's something that I think I had to reach out, really go inside myself a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and find a lot of the deep inner strength that I had.
Yes.
And one of the funniest stories was the second time I went to emergency. It was not funny at the time because it was the weirdest thing I'd ever gone through. And when I went back to speak to the psychiatrist after, we were just chatting and he was diagnosing me, and he told me I had acute depression, which of course, as soon as he said that, I looked at him. I don't think I said it out loud, but sense of humor can be a lifesaver, even if it's weird. So the one thing I thought, it might be cute to me, to you, but it certainly isn't cute to me. So it's not acute depression. So I thought, oh my goodness, for my mind to be working like that. Even at that time, I was analyzing myself, and it just felt really weird.
Yeah. But
And,
you know, a lot of comedians do have PTSD, and so they depend on their humor to get them through. And they have this theory around the fact that when comics stop being funny is because he got help. I didn't even know I was dealing with this myself, until I remember I started looking at my habits of, I must have the lights on, to sleep. I couldn't sleep with the lights off because sleeping with the lights off meant danger, and so instead of getting the help, it was more of making myself stay in the moment so that I'm in my mind, I think I'm safe. And so you have those conversations with yourself to convince yourself and to make try to lighten the situation, or any excuse to make you feel as though, quote unquote, I'm normal, because there's so much pressure that's put on the word normal in this society, which I don't even know what that means, but I don't know.
I don't think anybody does. And I think
There's
another
no such
my
word
thing,
as there's no such thing as normal. I mean, we live in the capitalistic state. There's no way you could have normalcy. Okay.
you can't.
Yeah. How do you think societal factors such as culture and social economic status influences an individual ability to thrive after facing adversity?
Culture had a lot to do with some of my challenges because I come from multiple cultures.
Mm-hmm.
When you do read my story as well, part of my back, I'm Canadian. I was born here, lived here all my life, but I've got Irish background and I've also got Romanian background. And both of those cultures I didn't know a lot about when I was younger, but I learned a lot more about them as I, well, talked to people, both friends and family. I
Yeah.
learned a lot from friends and family, and also that's what I studied in university.
Mm-hmm.
So history and culture became very important for me, and it was a way for me to find out who I was
Mm-hmm.
or who I am. So as far as class and things like that, I was very fortunate because a lot of people don't have the ability to go and pay for a psychologist, for
Mm-hmm.
example. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily have insurance coverage that will allow them to go to a psychologist or a social worker for help.
Mm-hmm.
So during most of my employment, I was able to go and seek professional help and have part of it covered. Now, because of my employment before too, I made a decent salary. And during the time when I wasn't covered by insurance,
Mm-hmm.
I paid quite a bit to go and speak to somebody professionally. And it always made me feel bad that a lot of people don't have the ability to do that because they're just paying for rent and food and every normal day to day things, whatever that normal again is.
Right.
So I felt very fortunate that I was able to do that. And it really struck me how many people can't do that.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, and it's not even. I think it's a combination of them not able to afford it, as well as not knowing where to find it. You know,
Yes,
uh, because unless and then how do you trust or even navigate to even ask for it when you or where that shame is over? I mean, shame is like a five-letter word that has the muscle of like the Incredible Hulk because that can cripple a person in their moment of trying to ask for help or even looking for help because they feel as though they're going to be judged or or not taken seriously. And when it comes to culture, for example, there are so many different cultures in Canada being a melting pot and the United States as well. you know um, so many people come from so many cultures where mental health is not spoken about. It's buck up and deal with it. You were having a bad day, or there's something else not in me. I mean, there is a lot of new agencies and new organizations. I actually tried to. I'm not going to name the place, but I reached out to a particular island, and I was looking to. We were doing something in the last podcast I was in, and we were trying to uh, donate money um, to an agency that help marginalize a particular marginalized group, and that deals with trauma. And we couldn't find one agency. We couldn't find one, and it was like, and when I did reach, it was a lady that was doing it. She said to me, "It's not that it's not there; it's that it's not supported." And it's a shame. People are ashamed to even ask, and they worry about other people talking about them, or about being considered soft or weak, or something's wrong with your family or whatever. So, culturally, there is that piece as well of a lot of pressure around that. And also, as economically, there is the where is it and how do I access it? And I don't want to access it because you already think I'm lazy. Now you're going to think that something wrong with me, and I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to. I want to have to you sit there. So, yeah, that is something I think that really does affect and influence any person trying to face adversity. And in Survive Then Thrive, like other practical advice for readers looking to navigate their own challenges, what are some of the actionable steps or exercise you recommend for someone seeking to enhance their resilience?
I think, again, journaling was an absolute lifesaver for me. Another thing that I did a lot of, and I still do, is I'll go out for a walk.
Oh, I love
That was
it.
really difficult at first
Yeah.
because I didn't feel safe going out.
Hmm.
But after a while, I was able to go for a walk, especially somewhere where there's a lot of trees around and birds chirping. I found that really does something to your brain to calm it down a little bit.
Yes.
And of course, going by the water, whether it's a river, a creek, a lake, an ocean,
Hmm.
I always found that very soothing as well.
Yeah.
Just chatting with somebody, going out for a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, I found that was very important, that the person I was spending time with, though, was calm.
Hmm.
And everybody seems a little bit judgmental when you're under a lot of stress.
Right.
So it was really important for me to go out with somebody and just sit and chat where I didn't feel like they were constantly judging me.
Yeah.
And I'm also not much of a talker. I love sitting in silence for half an hour and just gazing out into whether it's the stars or the flowers or the trees, whatever. I love silence. So for me to go and sit with somebody who talked nonstop was very difficult.
Hmm.
Or at least initially, it was very difficult for me to go and sit with somebody who talked a lot. But now it's not difficult for me to do that. I can sit and chat with people and it doesn't bother me. But I think when you were going through the initial stages of PTSD and getting all of the activity going into your mind constantly, it was just too much information that was coming.
Hmm.
So sit, listen to music, things like that really helped me. And putting together a story in music was always very comforting to me. I remember when 9/11 happened, I was at work
Hmm.
and I worked in financial services at that time too, so it was a pretty scary time. And even in Toronto, one of the main, head office, it was evacuated because nobody knew if it was going to be anywhere other than New York City that got hit.
Right.
What I did after that is I went home and I, of course, like everybody else, watched it over and over again, but I put myself into a situation where I would listen to music
Hmm.
pretty much endlessly. And I put together a tape of different songs that meant so much to me during that time. And I would go back and listen to those songs over and over and over again. I'd sit there and cry, but that's okay. You were letting the emotion out. And it was the music that made you feel sad, but understandably sad.
Right.
That was very comforting and soothing to me. So those are some of the ways I built my resilience.
Hmm.
And of course, talking to friends. Some of the places I went to walk were places that I had, for example, university, I had gone decades before. So one of the things I did was I went down to the university and walked through, and it brought back some of the memories that were not bad memories.
Right.
So it was a way for me to convince myself that I wasn't losing my mind either, because hey, that university is still there and it's exactly how I remembered it to be. So it's not my mind making things up, it's really there, and that's what it looked like, and that's how I remember it.
Yeah. Oh wow. And
So that was
do you find that I mean, you know, you're saying that going out because it was a challenge for you to go out. Do you find that it was like you were getting two great things out of it? You were one, you know, thinking going outside the box and being uncomfortable, being comfortably uncomfortable, right? As well as having to now um, be out there and be one with nature and feel it and feel alive. Did you find that there was like two things happening at the same time, and how did that make you feel?
absolutely, I felt like it was two things happening, and part of it is a little bit of stubbornness on my part as well. I felt that I was not going to let any person take away from me the
Oh
safety
wow.
that I felt when I was going out for a walk,
Mm-hmm.
going out to visit my family. I thought, they're not going to beat me and keep me locked up in an apartment all day, afraid to go out. So
Yes.
it was a little bit of stubbornness on my part too, that I weren't going to let, they did that to me once and they weren't going to do it again.
All right, you took back your power, girl.
Yes.
That's awesome. I love that. Um, oh, she's saying she can't hear anything. Oh dear.
Oh my.
Yeah. Uh,
We are having a very nice chat though.
I know we are, and they're saying they can't hear anything. Let me see. All my speakers are working. You want to say something one more time so I can see if yours are working?
Yes, I can
Oh, so
hear you.
Nicole's saying she can hear. So I'm not sure what's going on with Baby Eiffel. Baby Eiffel, you just scared me, girl. You just hear it. So Nicole, thank you, Nicole. Nicole says she can hear. Okay, thank you. I'll say we're having a great chat. Let's see. Where was I? Um, yeah. So I love the fact that you were able to use those to kind of figure out how to navigate your own challenges. So, as an author, what do you hope readers will take away from your book, and um, how do you envision it impacting their lives?
I hope people can read this book and recognize that anybody can go through a period in their life where they're feeling absolutely out of control. They've lost their memory, they've kind of lost their own story, but they can go back, or you can go back and find out what your story is again and tell it in such a way that it makes sense not only to somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
but particularly to yourself. So you can gain that self control again
Mm-hmm.
and recognize that you've gone through a really nasty period of time in your life, but you can certainly function again and get back to normal, whatever that may be, or your own normal,
Yes.
and live a good life. So
Yeah.
I hope it also makes people a little more empathetic, maybe, of somebody who is going through a very difficult time,
Yes.
recognizing that we all go through difficult times at some point in our life.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a little compassion and understanding to help people through those moments.
And there's a backup question for you. As you are going through your transitioning in your journey and taking your path now to understanding and acceptance, right? Did you find that it was difficult now to uh, be around others who are now starting their journey? Did you find that difficult? Did it trigger you, or were you able to pull on your empathy and, uh, navigate around that so that you don't go backwards, but still stay in your journey and either help by being a sound, like a sound guard, or did you try to, or did you now move away from people that were starting out their journey that could probably trigger you and pull you back in?
For the most part, after I started understanding what I was going through, I wasn't too bad. There
Okay.
were moments when I did have to get away from somebody for a while because I found it too triggering.
Okay.
And one of those situations in particular was at my last workplace when some of the things that were happening were reminding me too much of what happened to me at my previous employment. So it may sound very strange, but COVID was very difficult for everybody,
Yes.
including me.
Yes.
But in some ways, it was also a bit of a lifesaver for me
Mm-hmm.
because it allowed me to get away from the work environment that I was finding difficult. And eventually, I was able to work at home as well. So I wasn't around the people who were
Mm-hmm.
triggering me. Now, you mentioned people who were starting their own journey themselves. Usually, the people I found triggering were people who I felt were deliberately trying to set me off.
Mm.
And it does happen sometimes in the workplace where people knew what buttons to push and they'd push them.
Yes.
But if somebody was legitimately going through a difficult time, I found I was able to sit and even just sit there with them and listen. And even if you didn't say something,
Yeah.
I know with me, if there's somebody there and I'm in a really stressful situation, if I've got somebody there beside me and they're not saying a word, I'm good with that. In fact, that's sometimes the thing that helps me most
Mm-hmm.
because I know I'm not alone in that case. So I also did volunteer work for victim services, and that was one
Oh, it's
situation.
amazing agency. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had to be very conscious of what I was going through myself in that
Right.
situation because if
Yes.
anything was going to trigger me, that probably would have been
Yeah,
it.
definitely. Mm-hmm.
But quite honestly, I found it not as triggering as one might think
Mm-hmm.
because the thing that I kept in the back of my mind anytime I went out to a call was I've been there before and I know I've gotten through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can help this person get through it as well just
Okay.
by being there, whether it's talking to them if they want to talk, making a cup of tea to have somebody to sit and have a cup of tea
A
with.
cup of tea goes a
Just
long way.
sure does. So just so that person knows they're not alone.
Yes.
I know it might sound funny, but I didn't really find that triggering that much, although there were times when I had to be very conscious of
Mm-hmm.
what was going on around me so I didn't get triggered. Because the one thing that I was most conscious of and still am is if I'm not feeling right myself, then I shouldn't be trying to help that person who is going through something
Mm-hmm.
similar because I could potentially make it worse for them.
Yeah.
And that is the last thing I want to do. So it's
I call that the airplane theory. So the airplane theory is, you know, if you're in the airplane and you take the mask and you put it on the child, you're gonna die and the kid's probably gonna die too. But if you put the mask on yourself and you take care of yourself, then you can help. So yeah,
yeah.
you're right. And do you think that you were able to manage that because now you had already started your journey and you knew you had these different tools in place of how to navigate your mental health?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I probably would not have been able to do that initially because I had to get that help myself first
Yeah.
and get well into my own journey before I could
Nice.
help else.
So, are there any particular authors, researchers, or thought leaders whose work has influenced your understanding of resilience and personal development?
quite a few, and quite oddly, when I was having a lot of the symptoms too, I went back to some of the books I had read decades before in college and university, and I remembered them in a lot of detail. So a few of them I actually remember, and I wrote in my book that they helped. Some of them might have been a song. I remember reading books about R.D. Lang was one author that I wrote or read probably in this, would it have been 70s, mid 70s probably. And he was doing some research on psychology, that type of thing. And I went back to that. And another author that I went back to that I understood the influence he had on me was Viktor Frankl, who was a psychologist who was actually he was in, I think, Auschwitz. And he wrote a book about surviving Man's Search for Meaning and how people survived going through such a horrible situation. Now, I in no way would equate anything with that horrific event or world history, but it's something that really impacted me because it helped me understand that people can go through absolutely horrible situations and survive them. So they were two authors that had a big influence on me. Another author who had a big influence was Martha Stout, and that's the first book that my psychologist recommended that I read after she figured that I was there enough to read it. So the one quote that she really had is, she wrote about finding your narrative, like writing your story basically, which is what I've done. And I beat myself up so many times trying to remember everything. And I get mad at myself if I didn't remember every single thing about an event that had happened. So it really struck home when she said, when you're going through trauma and trying to go past it, you don't have to remember everything. Just be able to go and put that narrative together so you can move past it. The other thing that really impacted me in her book was, and not to blame, where blaming the perpetrator is one thing, and it's something that I think we can even learn to forgive somebody who has done something horrible to us, if only for ourselves. You don't condone in any way, but it allows us to move past it. And more importantly, it allowed me to forgive myself. As I always felt that I was somehow at fault for some of the bad things that happened to me.
Is that shame again, right? That shame again. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Peggy, so much. I really appreciate you coming and joining me tonight to have the conversation around your book. You can go to Barnes & Nobles or Amazon or Kindle and pick up a copy. Go onto Instagram, and if you can tell me, share your story, give us some insight about what you've learned from the book or what you hope to learn from the book, and you can win an autographed copy of Survive Then Thrive. Peggy, there it is. There it is.
Oh,
there we go. Awesome. Thank you so much, so much. I really thank you from the bottom of my heart. Remember to check me out on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, of course. And Peggy, thanks again for joining us. The part of the show we call Tell Me About Your Edges. I'm going to tell me about my edges. My edges is all about Peggy's book. And I love it so much. I can't wait to... I read this thing within one night. I stayed up and read it. I can't wait to get my hand on a hard copy because I love to touch paper. So again, you could Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, and Kindle. And you can check out Peggy on Facebook at Peggy Onlock. Again, thank you again. And for everyone, thank you for stopping by. We had quite a bit of people in. They were all quiet. I think they were just listening to your conversation, to your story. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being vulnerable with us and being authentic. And again, you can check us out on Instagram at embrace_your_edges. And thank you for coming. Bye, Peggy. Thank you for coming tonight.
And thank you so much. It was wonderful being here with you again this evening.
Aw, you're welcome. And thank you. So
Yes.
we will see you all next. Oh, wait a minute. I almost said next Saturday. We're no longer going to be doing Saturdays. This is our last Saturday. We'll be moving to Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. on YouTube Live. So we will check us out next Wednesday, 8 p.m. on YouTube. And we will be here. Colette with Love is under the weather today, and we send all our prayers to her, and I hope she feels better. So with that, thank you for being here. Bye, Peggy.
Bye-bye.